Welcome, 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 folks. Welcome, everyone. See you coming in from the waiting room. We are so glad you are all here. We start our services by inviting in some guests from the more than just human world. So as you humans are all arriving, I'm going to invite in these folks. You want to know who this is? Or these are. Oh my gosh, you all are so excited to be at Sunday service. These folks are the cocrico, the national bird of Tobago, also called the chakalaca. And I was recently awoken by three of them around 3 in the morning while staying on that island. And I misspecied them, thinking that it was the roosters, who generally start around 4:30 in the morning, and had some choice words for the roosters that turned out to be the chakalacas. Later, my local living friend, Keisha, helped me sort out the correct species for that cacophony that you just heard, and then shared with me her woes about living around chakalacas who eat from her garden the food she has intended to feed her husband and her children. She shared that she even watched one chakalaca snip a huge melon off the vine and roll it down her driveway. So as we start today, I think this is an excellent example of that topic that we typically explore in our Sunday services here, the joys and the challenges of interspecies living. Welcome to the Compassion Consortium Sunday service. I'm Reverend Sarah Bowen, and I'm joined today by co-founders Victoria Moran and Reverend William Melton, as well as our team members Phil, Elaine, and Jen. And we're also joined today by many members of the 2024 cohort of our Animal Chaplaincy training program, who will be honoring today a little later in our Compassion in Action segment today. And a few of them will be helping us out with the service today. To ensure we don't have unwanted, disruptive guests, we have turned off most of the Zoom sharing functions. So if you notice there's something that you'd like to do that you can't normally do, that's why during the service. We meet on the third Sunday of each month. If you're new to us, welcome. We are interfaith, interspiritual, and interspecies. And let me unpack that for you. Interfaith means we welcome people of any religion or spiritual path or system of meaning making, and we feature a diverse range within our programming. Today, we'll be talking to Vonettia Calloway, who identifies as a biblical Christian, which reminds me, for all of you who are observing Lent, may the next 40 days be a time of deep reflection for you on that divine source which supports you. I also know quite a few folks who are going vegetarian or vegan for Lent, and I am so excited to hear that news as well. And I'd be remiss not to wish a Happy New Year to all of you who are celebrating the beginning of the Lunar New Year. Welcome to the year of the Wood Dragon. This is an auspicious time that only appears every 60 years, folks. We are in for quite a year. Interspiritual means that we believe underneath all of the world's religions and spiritual paths and philosophies of living, we can find commonalities, particularly the shared values of peace, compassionate service, and love for the Earth community. And we are interspecies, which means when we say Earth community, we mean everyone, including very noisy chakalacas and chickens and the red-breasted nuthatches. Today, for our opening remarks, I'd like to add 2 more words that I don't usually, that begin with the prefix inter. The first is intersectional. While this term is used in a lot of ways today, I think it's important to name its origins, which started loosely in the 1970s, inspired by the work of Black feminist scholar activists. These women, many of whom also identified within LGBTQ communities, worked hard to broaden feminism's definition and scope to show the complexity of interlocking issues of oppression that women of color specifically faced. In the 1990s, law professor Kimberly Crenshaw gave a name to that crucial work that was being done by these scholar activists. She called it intersectionality, and it stuck. This lineage is really important because the intersectional movement also influenced those who were in animal studies and in animal protection to explore interspecies and intraspecies oppressions, to look at how systems which exploit animals also tend to exploit specific groups of humans. It's crucial that those of us who are working on animal issues see these intersectional connections and work towards solutions that provide the best possible outcomes for all. Which reminds me to let you all know, in case you didn't see it in the newsletter, if you were at our film night with John Lewis and Keegan Kuhn, I think actually this month, last year, is that when we had that film talk? If you were there, or if you weren't there and you're just curious about what I just said, their documentary film, They're Trying to Kill Us, is now available for free all of February on their website. And I'll put the link in the chat for you after I stop talking. It's really important film, and it's only available for us right now in February. So make sure in the next 2 weeks to get over there and take a look at that. My final interword for today is interbeing, a term rooted in the Zen Buddhist tradition and popularized by Thich Nhat Hanh during the foundation of his Plum Village Buddhist tradition and the Order of Interbeing community. Interbeing acknowledges that all things exist in a state of interconnected being that is interwoven and mutually dependent. I add that word today because it describes this community, and it also describes the community being created within our latest cohort of the Animal Chaplaincy Training Program. The folks there have been deepening and expanding their skills for attending to the mutually dependent needs of animals and humans. They've been exploring animal body language. They've been increasing their resiliency in order to comfort those who are suffering in the world, regardless of species. And they've been increasing their capacity to support those who are experiencing grief, compassion fatigue, empathic distress, moral injury, burnout, all that stuff that some of us are so intimately familiar with. They are an incredibly interesting group of folks from all over the US and Canada, as well as France, Germany, Australia, and the Philippines. The group includes pastors and reverends, Jewish rabbis, MDiv students, and a Dominican friar. We've also got wildlife rehabilitators, shelter workers, other animal care professionals, and volunteers. And of course, we have some beautifully fierce activists. The cohort runs the spectrum from highly religious, formal folks to Druids and Quakers, from spiritual Reiki practitioners to atheist humanists, and seemingly everything in between. They care for and about dogs and cats, horses and donkeys, rabbits and squirrels, chickens and cows. I could go on for the next 2 hours telling us about the 8.7 million species that we cohabitate with and that they care about and are concerned about their well-being. For 6 months, they've interwoven themselves with each other, with their communities, and with their habitats, and with us. Their commitment to making this earth a better place for animals and humans brings me to tears, and I hope it inspires all of us to feel tremendous hope. It will be my honor towards the end of our service today to officially recognize the oodles of hard work that these folks have put in during these 6 months. So in closing my opening remarks, I'll offer a sacred intention for all of us gathered here today. Take a deep breath with me. May we never stop seeing the interbeingness around us and the intersections of our advocacy with the needs of those who we interbe with in this interspecies world. Over to you, William.
right now is when we read the Tenets of Agreement of Compassion Consortium. And this is very, very important to us. It's on our website, and we always read it at the very beginning of our service. And so today, Denise Schaeffer has agreed to read our Tenets of Agreement. And so I'm just going to share with us a little bit about Denise, and then she will read our Tenets of Agreement. So Denise has been involved in animal rescue from a very young age, sharing her heart and home with rescued animals until their lives were complete. She worked professionally as a domestic violence court victims advocate, passionate about the prosecution of perpetrators, especially ones who use family pets as a tool to inflict abuse. She has assisted women in relocating to self-shelter with their children and their beloved pets, and supported families in their grief and loss of the victim at the abuser's hand. Denise currently lives with her husband, 2 elderly rescue dogs, and 2 rescue cats. And so, again, thank you, Denise.
Our tenets of agreement. We acknowledge a divine force at the heart of the universe and in all living beings. We may refer to this force as God, but it is known by many names and appears different in forms or formless. 2, we recognize common moral principles inherent within all wisdom traditions. 3, we affirm that compassion, reverence for life, and nonviolence are fundamental to religious faith and moral philosophy, and are to be extended to all sentient beings. 4, we stand by the principles of inclusion, diversity, and equality, and hold these as essential in our human relations. 5, we hold that non-human animals are imbued with the same essence of life and love as are human animals, and that there is moral parity between us. 6, we avow that humans do not own the earth, its resources, or its inhabitants, but instead must be involved in their protection and care. 7, we endeavor to eat and live in a kind and sustainable manner, moving away from animal foods. 8, we aim to provide spiritual comfort, fellowship, and food for thought to those practicing and exploring a vegan lifestyle. 9, we offer guidance and peer support for all those seeking a more compassionate and spiritual life. 10, we commit to sharing these principles freely with humility and respect in support of non-human animals and the earth.
Denise, thank you so much for reading those.
My pleasure.
And now we will move on to our interspecies spiritual practice, which I am very excited about today. I usually tell you all a little bit why I love these practices so much, which is it's important to find moments of peace and self-care. When we do advocacy and activist work, it's critical, it's crucial that we're able to do that. And so we take a little time each Sunday that we meet, doing one here. And the hope is that you will take it with you, and you will, do spiritual practices during the month to help you stay balanced and grounded, and at times when you're having difficulty or experiencing the issues that come up when we do advocacy and activist work, or just from living on planet Earth. Many of you will tell me, but I have no time. And so practices that multitask are some of my favorites. Spiritual practices that can be done when you're attending to the other parts of your daily life. I just love those. So I have one today that one of our ACT folks, Christina Fitz, created. And for those of you who have dogs, I think you are going to love this one. So Christina, if you could come up with me for a moment, and you could just share a little bit about what inspired you to create this practice, and then we will have Phil run the video for us. It's a 6-minute practice today, guys, and I think you're going to love it. Hi, Christina.
Hello. So this practice for probably the last 2 years, Yancey, my Shepherd Corgi mix, keeps me to a strict schedule. We have to play fetch every day when I get home from work. So I wanted to honor his needs, that he needs to go out as soon as I get home to do that. And then part of that also, a dog I recently lost, Dixie, as I knew her time was coming to an end. We would go sit outside and just enjoy the backyard together and enjoy the wind and the sun. So I wanted to incorporate both of them. Also, I'm coming home from work. I could be carrying any baggage from, working in a vet clinic. So I needed to also ground myself and kind of reset for the second half of my day. So that is what inspired this.
I love it. And I hope you all will love this too and find it very useful. And all you cat people, we can live vicariously through this practice. My cats won't fetch yet, but I'm working on it. All right, Phil, over to you to roll the video. Christina, thank you so much, and your four-legged friend for that practice. If I watch it too many more times, my husband may just get that dog in our house that he would like to bring home from the shelter. So thank you for your advocacy there and for all of that. And I'd like to say thanks to Phil too. I know that keeping this room a sacred and a spiritual place is a tough job that you do behind the scenes for us so we can have moments of peace like that. And we appreciate everything that you do for us to keep it that way. Victoria, let me hand it over to you. I'm so excited with what you have today.
And I'm excited to be here. Happy Black History Month and happy post-Valentine's Day. Wishing you all lots of love. And I'm really excited today to be talking with Vonettia Calloway. There you are. Okay, cool. Hi. So coming to us from Richmond, Virginia, Vonettia Calloway is the founder and director of the Black Vegan Experience. She's also the author of just a sweet, glorious children's book with a story behind it called My Color is Coconut. And Vonettia, I haven't known you a really long time, but for as long as I've known you, it seems like almost everything in your life has a story behind it. You kind of live in such a full, rich way that the stories seem to attach. And we're really fortunate today to get to hear some of those, and primarily the story of you. So you sent a really interesting resume. I wish all our guests could see what you did because you brought in some humor and some wonderful things. But what jumped out to me most was this sentence: although God spoke directly to me concerning the life of animals before I was vegan, I awakened to the plight of the animals after watching the film Farm to Fridge. So can you kind of unpack that for us, particularly what God revealed to you about animals?
Okay, so just to be completely transparent, hello everybody, and thank you for such an amazing introduction, Victoria. Most of us are, whatever faith we connect to, we're supposed to be studying, right? And so honestly, I didn't read the Bible like I should have. We learn how to fake it, you know how it goes. And so as I began to develop a relationship, a personal relationship, because a lot of times we're honoring the faith of our parents or grandparents, whoever, care for us, and you don't really get it, quote unquote. And I remember I had a driving class a while ago, and then most recently, this was probably, gosh, we've been in this house 12 years, maybe 10 years ago. I was coming, and we're in a very wooded area. Our subdivision is way into the county part. So as I was coming around the back road, there was this little squirrel, and they're all little, right? Compared to the car. And I remember like, uh-oh, here it goes. And I'm like, why did he try to commit suicide? But anyway, I'm trying to not hit him or her. And I hit it, and I hear a bump. And it's like, oh, well, they don't have a soul. And immediately God chastised me and said, but you didn't create them. Like, oh, sorry, Dad. And from that moment on, I recognized the fact that so many of us take things for granted because we didn't get involved in it. We weren't involved in the creation of it. It wasn't connected to us. But when we're held accountable or reminded that we're accountable for those choices, even if they don't have a soul or they don't believe the same way or they're smaller, it's just as powerful to honor their life. So.
Wow. Like I said, the stories find you. And that's a dazzler. Direct experience of the divine happens, not all the time. And I think because it's not just like, every 10 minutes we tend to think, does that happen? Well, yeah. And it happened to you. So then just tell us, we'll get a little bit less divine, but it's pretty divine to go vegan. So what happened after watching Farm to Fridge?
Well, I had actually my journey started with the Daniel fast through our church. It was a collective fast, again, faked a lot in my childhood and in young adulthood, but had made the decision because of what happened to my body when I tried to go back. And I didn't go vegan, guys, to be transparent, because of the animals, even though I respected animal life. I've always been a diehard recycler. Before my children could walk, they knew how to recycle. Because again, our faith talks about stewardship. So if you believe in scripture, in the beginning, God created, heavens and earth, and then along came Adam and, so forth, so on. But he was commanded to take care of the garden and all of the inhabitants of it, not to lord over it. So that's stewardship. And so I felt like, even though I didn't create the earth, my job is to take as best care as I can of it in my personal life, right? So as we began to move through, and I'm learning more about veganism and all the different components of it, although I didn't go vegan for the animals, I watched Farm to Fridge because I was actually doing a vegan outreach for the youth in a community close to us. And I was looking for a short film because it was going to be outreach where we introduce veganism. We show them a video. We eat a little vittles, from New Vegan. And then we have a discussion afterwards. And it was supposed to be, in my mind, middle schoolers who could grasp all these concepts, get permission slips and all that jazz. And then I watched it and I was like, maybe this is not the right movie. Oh my gosh. And I'm crying, like, I can't believe this is how animals are treated. That's not humane. Who would want that kind of energy going into their body? It was horrific. And how can you just be so callous with life in general? And it was just sad. And so after I saw that, it just kind of tugged at my heart. And then whenever someone questioned why, what's the big deal? I love steak, da 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 da. I'm like, oh, you must not know what happens to that animal before it becomes your steak. And maybe if you saw what happened, because you can tell people a story all day long, but until they can visualize it and connect to it, it's not always going to have the impact that you would like it to.
So you mentioned the Daniel fast. For people who don't know what that is, can you just briefly tell us?
Okay, I'll do my best, but briefly. So if any of you have ever fasted before, you're sacrificing something. Usually it's meat, it's sugar, it's something. But a Daniel fast is a little bit more stricter than just a traditional fast or intermittent fast, because not only are you giving up any animal products, you're also giving up sugar, you're giving up alcohol, and you're giving up unleavened bread. And if you wanted to find out like the connection to scripture, well, first of all, we already know about the garden, but jumping forward to the book of Daniel, there are two different parts in scripture. One is 10 days, one is 21 days, where trying to shorten it, he was captured by King Nebuchadnezzar, Babylonian, tried to convert him, make him eat his way, live his lifestyle. And Daniel, he declined. He was like, I will only eat what my God calls me to eat, which was parse, P-A-R-S-E, akin to fruits, vegetables, seeds, nuts, and berries, and then challenge them. And so again, I think everyone should go back and read it because it helps to break down the strength that is gained from what God created instead of us trying to eat creation and the consummation of animal products. So
Right.
it's pretty powerful. And it helps you, if you believe this way, to remove the idols in your life that are in the refrigerator. Because we go to the fridge when we're hungry, but more so when we're tired, when we're bored, when we're mad, when we're sad, when we're angry, all of those things. It's just so many. And I was like, I didn't connect to it. And then also how it happens to balance us out. Like all of the toxins that we consume, even when we're living our best healthy life, when you get rid of anything but the fresh fruits, vegetables, seeds, nuts, and berries, I feel like you become more one with God. So it's pretty intense for me.
Yeah, it's a great story, and I love it that so many churches are doing it. I've also heard the Daniel story called history's first controlled nutrition experiment, because Daniel and his friends were doing what we would today call a whole food, plant-based kind of diet.
Yes.
And the
Yes.
king's soldiers were eating, the meat and the alcohol and all that. And so the comparison at the end was Daniel and his buddies had it going on in terms of strength and muscle development and all that. And the other guys didn't. So it's sort of like, wow, it's like thousands of years ago, but the game changers. So.
And it still touches on the two of the stereotypes that follow veganism. One, it was associated with wealth, like the king's meal was associated with wealth because he felt like what Daniel ate would show that he was neglected and not cared for, right? And then on the flip side, that's the manly masculine piece of it. And there's no way you could be sustained by just what's in the garden. So it's really cool.
It is indeed. So let's talk about the Black vegan experience. So how did you come up with the idea and what does it do? Sometimes it seems like, oh my gosh, there's so many organizations doing so much great stuff, but so hard to keep up with them all. And then I hear about one like yours, which is so unique that it's like sometimes I think, do we need so many organizations? Well, yeah, when they're this different and interesting and important, we do. So tell us about yours.
So I encourage everyone to grab a ticket, first of all. But basically, where it came from, again, was vision from God. After you learn about the health disparities that plague the Black and Latina communities, and unfortunately, the disconnect between plant-based hospital systems that don't include them and make it more multicultural, it pulls on your heart and it makes you wonder, like, what is intentional and what is not. And so the vision was born over a Vitamix demonstration at Costco. Myself, my daughter, 'cause I'm a teacher, guys, so I would talk so much with my hands. And then my daughter's a nutritionist. And we met an RN, her husband, who was a naturopathic physician, and she shared about her trainer and her doctor, who were all plant-based vegan. And I was like, oh, there's more Black people doing this? Like, I thought I was the weird person. And so as we continued our conversation, and they shared with me that they had attended this event with the hospital system that put on the conference, and that over the years of me hearing about it, I hadn't been able to attend because I taught in September and they were always in September, that they hadn't become more diverse. And I was like, well, if they're not going to invite us to the party, we'll just throw our own. And that's where the Black Vegan Experience was born. And it's a marriage between a health conference and a vegan festival. The difference between the events that we host, my organization, Committee of Consciousness, is that ours are alcohol free. You can, get lit, turn up whatever else at a different time, but I'm not allowed to bring alcohol into my classroom, and the world becomes my classroom when we travel with our events. So it's the same thing. And I'm not as limited as I was in the classroom, even though I can reach the kids and they can go home and tell a story. At the events, I get their mom, their dad, their aunts, their uncles, their cousins, their aunties, their grandparents. Like, we get everyone. And it's a whole event that engages the whole family and the community together. There's so many stereotypes that people believe to be true about Americans because they've never been to America. They only see us on TV, right? It's the same thing with vegans. It's the same thing about Black culture. But when you bring people together, then you get to see, oh, wow, that was not, I was thinking inside the box instead of out of the box. When it comes to flavor, when it comes to who's vegan, why they're vegan, and hearing people's personal experiences, like, you just have no idea how deep it goes. Or again, why we don't have the same connections to the humane component. But you see it a lot in mainstream veganism. So again, that's why we want to have all of it encompassed in one place. You might only get that one opportunity to share.
So I know you have a lot of cool stuff coming up, and you can certainly tell us about that, but I really want to know about what happened. I think it was last year in Tulsa, and why you chose Tulsa.
It was so powerful. So I don't know how much you all know about Tulsa, Oklahoma. It was deferred to a couple of different times right before the social unrest with Mr. George Floyd losing his life. And I had heard it in conversation, in movies with my husband, comic books. And I was like, this can't possibly be real. But yet, after the social unrest, I heard another personal story from someone. And I was like, this has to be true. And so I began to dig into it. And if any of you have never heard of the Tulsa Race Massacre, it happened. It happened over 100 years ago, and hundreds of Black people, natives, were basically killed, all of their property destroyed because of, obviously, racism. And I believe that's spiritual as well. So in my heart of hearts, if I'm a woman of color and I'm going out to inspire and lift underserved communities, why would I not go to Tulsa? And it was a whole 20-hour drive because I had to go in and meet people, guys. And I could just feel the torment. I could feel the pain. I could feel the suffering. I could feel the division, like, in my whole spirit, man. And I was just like, oh my gosh. So I just began praying ahead of time before the event that the people would not see division, that they would come together. And this is years and years of people being on one side of the road versus the other. And we saw communities come together. We saw people who didn't feel like there was representation of success that there was representation of doing different lifestyle and still having a good time about it. It really blew our mind. Even to our Airbnb hostess, it says, I'm going to have smart people in our home. And Dr. Rao was there. We had such a cool multicultural group. It was Dr. Rao is Indian. He actually spoke. We had a celebrity big group that was part of it. And I actually had just reached out to his manager and said, hey, listen, you have this big bodybuilder guy, big black guy. Well, he's Nigerian, but he's talking about eating all the time. Well, people don't realize he works out hours a day, right? So he might be selling the restaurant that he's promoting, but he's also selling disease and death, for people who don't understand that he's doing so much to combat what he's eating. Can we do a plant-based challenge? Can you guys come on board and help support our vision and get the word out about how to do this healthier with the vegan lifestyle? And so he did participate. He's very quiet, but it was nice to see other people see who he was and identify, oh, he's got on the black vegan tea and da-da-da-da. And so, of course, the engagement when you look online can be a gambit of everything. But I did love seeing other vegans say, finally, you're trying the vegan food and, oh, this is cool. And, right on. And like, are you going to start doing more vegan restaurants? And then you have, your trolls that are going to be negative. But again, it was still connection and engagement that hadn't happened before. And people who had never heard of veganism, they got to see it for the first time or hear about it for the first time. So that was exciting. And in addition to that, we were honoring the three living survivors, who was Miss Viola Ford Fletcher. She's 100. Well, now she's 109 years old. Her brother, Uncle Red, and Miss Mother Randall. So unfortunately, Miss Viola Ford Fletcher's brother passed away about 6 weeks after we came through. But to witness defiance, because that's all we have plenty of centenarians, but like I believe that they're living because of their story. And the lawsuit that they filed against the state for the city for that happening had been thrown out that past summer. And so it was just standing in solidarity with them, letting them know that they matter, even though we were thousands of miles away. We love them, we're supporting them, and that we're coming through and bringing any influence that we had to just lift them up. And I heard that most of her diet is plant-based too. Wow. Just so you, if you want to live to be 109, that's the ticket.
So I found something on Instagram just yesterday. It's a site called History in Color, and you just can scroll through and see videos of things that happened in the past. And one of them was the Black Wall Street in Tulsa, like 5 years after this happened. And you actually could see some of the people, like you said, defiance, who had built back and just came back after this horrendous, awful thing, and this is, of course, why we need Black History Month. I lived in Kansas City. That's not far from Tulsa. I didn't hear of this until 3 years ago. So it's just so important that the word get out so that we can just see things as they happened and go forward and make it better. So in terms of going forward better, what are some of the cool things that you have lined up with the Black Vegan Experience?
So the vision for this year is to our first event is April 13th of this year, so very close. It'll be the first time we actually do a gospel vegan experience. I've learned that a lot of church people do not want to mix with even a festival that has secular music and secular activities. So this one is going to be intentional about drawing them out, getting them connected, because we recognize that leadership is present, and we have the opportunity to share that through the churches, which is where historically Black people receive their information was from the schools and from the churches. So if we can tap into leaders, we can reach everyone. The choice is still going to be theirs, but I feel like we just need that all together. And then from there, we're going to Chicago, back to Atlanta, and to Durham, North Carolina. So, and in between all of those events, we're hoping to still have pop-ups and free community events here in the local area. And it's just exciting. I serve at one of the food pantries that I had no idea about until we had our event at their church. And then they also have a homeless shelter. So through their outreaches, and they do monthly outreaches, so I connect to them in the summer when I don't have events, I have been able to take our experiences, our story of veganism to all of these places alongside the church. At the food pantry, I'm bringing samples. When we do the outreaches in the community, I'm bringing food. We're sampling people. At the homeless shelter, I delivered vegan snacks for them on Veterans Day. And so I just tied, my life is this, this work. And so I just tie it in, and I do my best to make it as personal as it is, because that's what life is all about, is relationship. And as long as people don't feel like you're trying to sell them or manipulate them into making choices, I believe they're open-minded and open-hearted.
So I want to ask you, Vonettia, about the tremendous growth of veganism in the Black community. When I was working on my book, Main Street Vegan, back in 2011, one of the questions that came up, and I have a little box in there of, why does veganism look so white? And at the time, and we're talking 12, 13 years ago, it really did. And I was, pulling out all the Black celebrities and people that I knew that were and had been doing it. I mean, there've been amazing Black vegans for, 60 years. But now the most rapidly growing segment within veganism is Black women. So tell us why.
Well, I believe it's because of all of the health disparities that have impacted life. If you think about the different reproductive issues that I think more women of color have had to deal with, the influx of cancers related to hormonal imbalances that could have come from the hair chemicals that were used, the feminine, care products that were created with the intention of reaching communities that pride themselves, the studies I've done, obviously, so the research that was targeted towards Black and Latino women. So again, it's so you knew these things and you kind of use them to sell products, but you didn't realize that this was going to cause, or maybe you did, the cancer. So the number one reason I do believe is to prevent these health issues. I know off the top of my head, 10 women of color who have had cancer in the last 5 years, if not the last 2. And so where is it coming from? If we are not doing anything different, besides working out of the home that we did 50 years ago, then there's got to be a common denominator somewhere. And I believe it's just what's been put in the food, the processing, the different chemicals that were being used to maintain hygiene and, things like that. And so that's the aim. And then again, if you think about it, yeah, sure, if you believe traditionally the men are the head of the household, but who runs the house? We do. We buy the groceries, the cleaning supplies, things for the children, the entire family. We plan, we are the businesswomen of our households. And so if women are making those choices, why wouldn't it impact their entire family? And so it begins with one family. And then let's say for my husband and I go travel, right? Even if he's not vegan, which he's not, that's totally his choice. But we go somewhere, for example, we went to Hawaii for his best friend's wedding. Everyone around us adopted to my lifestyle because they said they can eat anywhere they wanted to, but they wanted to make sure I was taken care of. Uh-huh. So even if it was only for a week, I had a group of friends and their extended family not hurting any animals while they had their lunch, dinner, and, so forth and so on.
Wow.
So to me, that's powerful. And it only takes one person to impact that change. And I really believe that's why.
Wow, that is powerful. So just in our last minute or 2 minutes, you are one powerful person. And I know your life is not easy. You have had to deal with rough stuff. You are having to deal with rough stuff as you go along. So just give us your take on how to live spiritually and strongly when things are not great.
Well, sometimes you do have to take a minute and cry. You have to get it out. And, in our weakness, God is made strong. And so I'm reminded that it's not my burden to bear alone, and that the community is what it is. But there are some times where I have to turn off all of my gadgets, my gizmos, and that can be hard sometimes when most of our work is done online. But just go into my closet, because then that way everybody knows this is my quiet time, leave me alone, and just take some minutes to meditate and pray and just be quiet and still. I have friends that I can reach out to. I have daily scriptures. I actually did 31 days of affirmations for January, and most of them came from scripture alone, which I don't think a lot of people knew about on my TikTok. But when I go and serve, that helps me stay grounded, and it helps me be reminded that it's bigger than me.
Ah, Oh, Vonetta,
Thank you.
some people, you just wish you could live in a neighborhood where everybody that you think is just as cool as can be could all be there together. But at least we have our electronic neighborhood, and that's wonderful. So Reverend Sarah has put the blackveganexperience.net in the chat. If you want to put other ways to find you, you mentioned TikTok and all of your various social media over there. We'd love to see it. And thank you so very much.
I think we are divinity on the inside. And today that is something that is really, really important, I think, when we look at launching animal chaplains out into the world. So Elaine, how about we have a conversation about this?
Hi, Reverend Sarah. I'm so glad you're here today. It's, for one thing, I would like to do a small introduction for you. I'm not sure people realize how learned you are. Our Reverend Sarah has a BA in Human Ecology from Michigan State University, an MA in Religious Studies from Chicago Theological Seminary, a Master's of Divinity equivalent from One Spirit Interfaith Seminary, and a forever learner. She is currently completing postgraduate work in anthrozoology and humane religious studies. And there are rumors of a doctorate in her future.
And a big stack of books to go with it.
You bet. So I wanted to let everybody know I am one of your students. I'm very blessed to be one of your students. And I love learning from you. And I think you were a gift to our animal chaplaincy program. And I'm so glad to be a part of it. So I wanted to let you know that.
And it is such a treat having you in the program, in this cohort of wood dragons that we have right now. So it's just really, it's my pleasure. And it's really a delight to be able to let the greater Compassion Consortium community know about this part of our work.
Yeah, well, I've learned a lot. As a Quaker, we don't have a lot of dogma or tenets, but I found deep within the animal chaplaincy a Quaker tradition, because one of our testimonies is stewardship of the earth. And that, of course, includes animals. And as I began to investigate it, I found quotes from the founder of the Quakers in 1650, telling people to be kind to animals and not to hunt them. So it has made me turn inwards towards my own faith, and yet helped me see from so many wonderful people, so many views of animals I didn't even know existed.
8.7 million species. Yeah. So, the program itself is non-denominational, and it doesn't require students to have a specific outlook, spiritual or religious outlook, but it prepares people for a diverse set of belief systems. So we look at that, right? Especially Vonetta just teed up one of my favorite questions and my favorite species. Y'all know I talk about squirrels all the time. But one of the things we explore is that question of animal souls and its linking to animal values, or the value of animals, and how people look at that through all of the world's religious traditions. If I had $1 for every time someone asked me, does my animal have a soul, or does this animal have a soul? It's really one of those questions that we look at, and we look at from a lot of different perspectives. There's a lot of other questions we look at too. How do you survive animal loss? Or how can I get my synagogue or church or mosque or meditation center or wherever I am when I'm not at Compassion Consortium? How can I help them to try out plant-based eating as part of our climate change awareness program? Or how do you support animal care professionals and activists with burnout and well-being challenges? Or how do I help my community address human-wildlife conflicts? It's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of stuff that we look at in the program. And so animal chaplaincy is a pretty new field. And often, when I mention that I'm an animal chaplain to someone, they'll be like, "Oh, how cute. Do you bless pets?" And I'll say, "Well, yes, and and a lot of other things." So the program itself is it's actually kind of in chunks. The folks that we are going to be talking about today have just completed the 6-month certificate program. They've done 60 hours of live training. They've done over 120 hours of personal study in these topics we're talking about. Our 9-month folks will go on to ordination. They'll do 30 more hours of live training and practicums and a capstone project and all sorts of stuff to kind of launch themselves into the world as an animal chaplain, or to integrate animal chaplaincy into whatever they do. And I mentioned a little bit in the beginning of our service today about the wide diversity of ways that our students are involved in animal protection. And I think the last thing I would love to tell people about it is that the training has those live classes, but also has a sense of community. And we have a lot of guest speakers who come in to the program. So, this year we've got the animal theologians, Claire and Andrew Lindsay. We've got Mark Beckoff and Zazie Todd and all sorts of folks who come in to help us understand the lives of animals more too. So it's not just about caring about them or loving them or having concern for them or keeping them from suffering. What do we know about them? What do we know about their umwelts or their viewpoints? So it's science and spirituality together. Did I do it justice, Elaine? You're in the program. What other insights do you have before we announce these folks and do some honoring? And I see you've got a guest speaker there.
She has to be here. I think you did it justice. I was just so surprised how it changed me. As a Quaker, we don't have a lot of ritual. I'm in love with ritual now. I really like. I have a mezuzah outside my door. I have a thurible, which are those smoke sensor things that they swing in church on order from Amazon. I've always smudged my house, but now I want a device to do it in. I am in love with bringing ritual into my life. And as you know, Sarah, I also am in love with the syllabus. I think the sources that we are advised to read and that we discuss have made me think in ways I never suspected. And also allowed me to hang out with people I never suspected I would hang out with. So thank you for that. And that's what I would say about the chaplaincy program. If you join it, get ready for some change within yourself and with how you look at the world and what you have to offer the world. All of the above.
I like that. Yeah. What I have found is when we're only within our own groups, I mean, this happens in religion and this happens in animal issues as well, or animal studies or animal protection, animal care, whichever part of this puzzle you're part of, is if we're only talking to the people we agree with, if we're only talking to people where we're getting confirmation bias, like I like to listen to them because they believe like I do, we are not seeing the full picture and we're not able to attend to conflict when it arises, right? So how are we able to have conversations about, you may have this belief, I may have this belief. Now, what are we going to do to try to solve this problem that we're seeing in the world when we have completely different viewpoints on it, or slightly different viewpoints, or however that is. And so I really like to spend a lot of time with people. I love to spend time with people who believe like I do, sure. And I also love to spend time with people who push me and say, well, did you know, as an animal control officer, here's the stuff I'm facing. Or did you know, as someone who works in a crematorium, here's do you know that this is going on? Or as someone who works, different kinds of roles that help us all learn from each other. Or did you know that as someone who trains dogs so that they aren't euthanized in shelters, or all these different pieces. So I could go on forever, but we don't have time forever, and I'd like to get on to some of these folks that we are talking about today. So Elaine, thank you for opening up your space of compassion in action, where we highlight something for us and for this program today. So Phil, I know you've got some slides with some tiny little pictures in them to assist me here. And I also know that you're going to, and folks, this is going to make Phil nervous, but I'm going to ask him after I go through these if he would give folks the ability to turn on their video so that we can see the faces of these folks, many of them who are with us here today, and just to talk to you about just amazing people a lot. We often read lists of names of people who've passed, right? We do that annually around 9/11, or we do it in different ways in different places. We don't often read the names of people who are transitioning in other ways. And all of these folks, as you mentioned, Elaine, are transitioning in their lives to deeper and more expansive ways of caring for the more than just human world. So I would love if you all would grace me with the ability to say their names aloud. Adele Christensen, Alex Peters, Elise, and I'm going to, oh boy, all of you, help me with the grace on the last names. Marco Tully, Angela Elric, Erin Dahl, Asher Naxon, Aurora Hunt, Beth Mandelbaum, Carla Gentry, Sherry Hellman, Cheryl Atem Alexander, Christian Ventura, Christina Fitz, who you met earlier, Daniel Burek, Deb Benario Martin, Denise Schaeffer, who read our tenets for us today, Elaine Hutchinson, Estella Torres, Jeannie Joseph, Gigi Alexander, Jackie Sailing, Jai Berkaiga. I'm going to take that away. Jai, we got to talk so I know how to pronounce your last name perfectly. Janet Madden, Janice Lakers, Jerry Okamata Tanaka, Jessica Hoffman, John Parker, and Julia Helmke. But wait, that's not all. I feel like I've got a Ginsu commercial in me here somewhere. But wait, that's not all. Here's the rest of these wonderful folks. Julie Matson, Karen Kohler, Katie Snicker, Christy Zahn, Christina Miller, Lars Pardo, Lisa Lyle Wagoner, Louise Green, Mark Newman, Mary Ann Bombera, Melissa Hubble, Michelle Carrera, Noelle Noli. Noelle, I love saying your name. Noelle Noli. Noelle Noli. Paula Ford, Paula Newman, Renee Athe, Robin Bisha, Sarah Scott, Sarah Wilkes, Sharon Martin, Sophie Gamond, Stacy Dodd, Stephanie Aaron, Susie Silver, Terry Ray Goldsworthy, Terry Van Slyke, Tina Cruz, Tury Brandow, who will be joining us in a little bit for our final blessing, Valerie Richards, and Zaid Evans. So at the risk of scaring Phil by allowing all of the turning on of videos, if I just mentioned your name and you would like to be seen in this community, please feel free to click on the button, hey Carla, that says turn on video, so you can give a wave so that we can get a look at you in your habitats. We are so delighted that you are part of our community, that you've completed the 6 months. Some of you will be talking about again in 3 months as you finish up the 9-month ordination program. For those of you who have just been with us for 6 months, we are so excited to see what you are going to do in the world. May your paths be blessed. May your work be blessed. May you have moments of rest. Yes, rest. May you have moments of grace when things feel wobbly. May you have moments where the world is very shiny, and may you stretch yourself into those places that feel prickly. Elaine, I think that's it for your and my time together. I think we are moving on to blessings and prayers.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm just so glad you were here today and showed people what the chaplaincy is and can be.
All right. So we will roll right on to something our chaplains are very familiar with and have been practicing all year, which are blessings and prayers and good news and dealing with the news that's not so good. I would like to first announce the good news segment. This year, we have a good news at the beginning of our blessings and prayers by request. And so here's some good news. In Maryland, a first-of-its-kind law requires that any facilities conducting experiments on animals also pay into a fund that finances alternative non-animal research methods. It is so important that money is going into non-animal research methods. So the first part of that sentence, I'm still upset. We've got animal research happening in some of the ways it's happening, but I am glad that we are getting more money for the non-animal research methods. Second good news I have for you all is following the trend of the federal Big Cat Safety Act that some of you may remember from 2022. It banned the hands-on like cub petting, right? So like breeding tigers and big cats so they could be petted and you could put your picture on Instagram and tiger selfies and all of that nonsense. A new law in Illinois makes it illegal to take bear or monkey selfies at roadside zoos. It is really important to get some of these kind of things that are seen on social media non-normalized. Okay, but along with celebrating good news, we also attend to challenges that animals and humans face. So, Phil, if you could open the chat for our entire community.
Okay.
And thank you so much. I know I'm going rogue on you today with some of these things, and I appreciate our faith today that those who are sharing with respect and with the sacredness of this space. So if you have a joy or challenge you'd like us to witness today, please put it in the chat. Because Zoom now allows us to comment on posts, I encourage you to support each other in whatever you're putting in that chat. And while you might enter in there things that you would like blessings or prayers for, or good news of your own that you have, I'd like Tury Brandow to come on up.
Okay, here we go.
I know I'm asking you to do a lot of things at the same time, Phil. Tury is a happily retired individual who finally has all the time to explore so many subjects and projects she longed for so many years, such as volunteering at her local animal shelter, participating in the Cornell Lab annual bird count, which I think is coming up. I got a note on that on my phone today, plus lots of time for gardening and reading and studying about this incredible world that we all live in. Tury, I will take myself off the screen. If you could please offer your gorgeous blessing today.
Thank you, Reverend Sarah. Good day, everyone. A new day blessing for the red-breasted nuthatch. Bless you, my little friend. Bless your cheerful, energetic little self, for it infuses my morning with the sweetness and awe of a new day. I gladly offer you sunflower seeds and fresh water, for these simple things humans can provide for such a beautiful, wise little creature that adds so much joy to my being. Bless you, my little friend. May you always be safe from the resident hunters. Watching your mystical powers of flight, I marvel at your ability to glide so freely between heaven and earth. I take comfort in knowing Great Spirit has granted you the gift of keen eyesight and swiftness to rise above any reach of the local 12-pound land-dwelling feline. Bless you and your family, my little friend. For finding safety and comfort in the thicket, I strive to keep wild for you, shielding you from the ways of weather, hungry hawks, and all who wish to do you harm. Bless you, my little friend, for offering me your sweet presence each day of each year, for sharing your ancient wisdom of savoring each moment, for teaching me how to ride the winds of life and to be open and grateful to the gifts of each day. You bless me with more than you will ever know. Thank you.
Tury, thank you so much.
Very
I think
welcome.
I've seen that feline around, and so I say that blessing and prayer around here quite a bit. And in the chat, just adding in prayers for all of the victims of war, particularly for the more than humans who are more often than not are forgotten. Yes, the humans and the other than humans who are having challenges in war and also areas of conflict. For Rachel, whose cat Zest collapsed and died suddenly, even though he was less than 2 years old. And for Diane, yes, I had this on my list, offering prayers for Mandy, who's dealing with kidney failure. And prayers for Phil's friend Holly, who has challenges. Keep them coming, folks, if you have any more. And Phil will bring up our closing blessing slide. And I will put all of the animal chaplains on the spot. If they would feel comfortable raising their hands with me, or taking a deep breath, or putting themselves in whatever prayer position feels comfortable for them, as we all say these words together. And y'all can join us too. May all creatures everywhere be happy and free. May the thoughts, words, and actions of our lives contribute to this happiness and this freedom for all. And please end your final closing word, whatever that is. May it be so. Amen. Amen. So mote it be. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Tury, thank you so much. Thank you all for being with us today for Sunday service. And thank you to our guest animal chaplains, to Vonettia for what she had to share with us today as well, and to this awesome team that I love to work with. We will see you next month. William has a lot of awesome announcements to tell you about of things that are coming up. So stick around, and stick around afterwards, because Victoria will be inviting us to fellowship.
So it's now time for us to kind of talk about the upcoming events. For March 17th, our Compassion Consortium guest will be Sarah Delow, and he is engineering consultant and physical physicist who is passionate in promoting a vegan lifestyle and ahimsa nonviolence as compelling solutions to many global issues. He comes from the Jain faith, an Indian religion with ahimsa at its center. Rob is a lifelong vegetarian and ethical vegan since 1991. He volunteers for numerous groups, is a board advisor for numerous like-minded organizations, and has been active in the Jain community internationally, and has been an ethical investor for decades. So he explores ways of integrating sound science into related areas of his activism. So for our Compassion Consortium in action on March 17th, this will be an invitation from Victoria Moran and me, Reverend William Milton. And we're going to introduce and describe to you our feature film that we've been working on. So setting the scene, a dairy cow escapes from a slaughterhouse in a Midwestern town and takes refuge in the yard of Bob Sanders, who's a computer tech owed money by the plant. He seizes the cow as collateral and calls his lawyer. His lawyer contacts Patricia, aka Cow Patty. And I just want to add a little thing. I come from the Midwest, and so when somebody says cow patty, I know what that means. And I'm just assuming all of you know what a cow patty is, because it's very important, because that is the nickname for Patricia Levinson. So you all know what a cow patty is, right? Okay, so anyway, so the high school classmate, so well-known animal rights lawyer, leads Bob's defense. And so there begins the story of Miss Liberty. And please check out the Miss Liberty website and learn more about the film and where we are in the development process. And you can sign up for notifications as the process goes forward. So Miss Liberty is an associated with the Compassion Consortium as a 501c3 non-profit organization. So then the next thing that we have is our Compassion Consortium for our engaged member practice for March 12th, and that's going to be our chaplain Jen Baker, and she's going to be offering our practice called Harmony in Animal Advocacy, Balancing Commitment and Self-Care. So we'd love to hear you for that. And then the last thing is Victoria Moran's Main Street Vegan podcast will air the February 22nd when Victoria interviews Wayne Schwang. He's recently released from a jail term rescuing sick birds from an egg factory and getting them in veterinary care. And now he's facing trial for releasing dogs from a research facility. So Wayne is a brilliant, thoughtful, courageous, and controversial figure in the animal rights world. And he's an American attorney and animal rights activist. So you can just hear him on his podcast, wherever they exist. Anyway, so here we are. Okay,